All right, so let's talk about a poem pretty much everyone has heard of, Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken. And at its core, it's really simple. It's about something we all have to do all the time, make a choice. And Frost, man, he had this incredible knack for taking these totally ordinary moments and pulling out something so deep, so profound about how our choices really do end up shaping our entire lives.
Oh, come on. You know these lines. You've seen them absolutely everywhere. On coffee mugs, graduation cards, you name it. They've kind of become this ultimate anthem for being an individual, for going against the grain. The popular idea is that it's all about being brave, choosing that tough, unconventional road, and boom, that's the secret to a great life.
But here's the thing, is that really what this poem is celebrating? Because, and this is where it gets super interesting, if you actually look at the words Frost wrote, a whole different story starts to bubble up, a much more complicated one. So is it this big heroic cheer for nonconformity, or is something else going on? All right, let's dive in and find out. Okay, so is it this anthem of individuality? Well, let's take a closer look at the evidence. To really get to the bottom of this, we've got to go right back to the source. Let's put on our detective hats, park the popular idea for just a minute, and see what the words themselves actually tell us. So the poem kicks off with this classic image, right? A fork in the road. And right away, the speaker feels this little twinge of regret. And it's not because he's worried about making the wrong choice. No, he's just sorry that he can't do both. He can't live two lives at once. And man, that is such a relatable feeling, isn't it? So, were the roads really different? This is where we uncover a pretty big contradiction. Okay, so this is probably the first huge clue that busts the whole less traveled myth wide open. I mean, think about it. If one path was the bold, rebellious choice, you'd expect them to look completely different, right? Well, that's not exactly what the poem says. And here it is, straight from the speaker's mouth. He says he took the other path because it was just as fair. Then, for a split second, he thinks maybe it was a little less worn, but he corrects himself right away, saying they were worn really about the same. So the evidence is pretty clear, right? In that moment, there's no obvious, heroic, less traveled path to take. And if that wasn't clear enough, Frost just hammers the point home. He says that on that specific morning, both roads were covered in leaves that hadn't been stepped on yet. Nobody had been down either path that day. So let's be real. The choice wasn't between a well-worn highway and a rugged trail. It was between two options that were, for all intents and purposes, identical. Okay, so it's a story for the future. This is where the poem does this really cool time shift. So, the big question is, if the roads were basically the same, how on earth do we end up with that famous line about the one less traveled by? Well, the secret is all in that final stanza. This is where the poem jumps forward in time. It's not about what's happening in the woods anymore. It's about the story he's going to tell. Okay, so understanding this timeline is absolutely crucial. You have the decision happening in the past, right, back there in the woods, but then you have the story he's going to tell, and that's happening way off in the future, ages and ages hence. He's not actually remembering what happened. He's imagining how he's going to frame that story years from now. And the language he uses is everything. I shall be telling this. He's not saying I told. He's saying I will tell. It's all about the future. And that sigh? Oh man, we always think it's a happy sigh of satisfaction, don't we? But it could just as easily be a sigh of regret, or just wistfulness for that other life he couldn't lead. Frost leaves it wide open. It's like he's rehearsing a dramatic speech. All right, so what does this difference even mean? Because it's clearly not about the road being better. Let's connect the dots here. If the roads were the same, and he's just planning to tell a dramatic story about it later, then what on earth does he mean when he says it made all the difference? It has to be something way deeper than just, yay, I'm a nonconformist. Here's the real kicker. The difference he's talking about isn't about his life being better. It simply means his life is different. By choosing one path, his life became one thing, and by not choosing the other, it didn't become something else. That's it. And that's the whole point. The poem is a commentary on this very human thing we do. We look back at our choices, even the totally random ones, and we have to give them meaning. We rewrite our own history to make ourselves the hero of the story. So it really is about the choices that shape us, but maybe more about the stories we tell ourselves about them. When you boil it all down, this poem isn't really about a fork in the road. It's about memory.
It's about the incredible power of the stories we tell about our own lives. It's about how we take the messy, sometimes random path we've walked, and we look back and we draw this neat, tidy line to make it all seem like it was meant to be.
Okay, so let's do a quick recap of what we've uncovered. First, the poem itself tells us the two roads were almost exactly the same. No clear road less traveled in sight. Second, that famous last part of the poem is a prediction, a little performance he's planning for the future, not something that's already happened. And third, and this is the most important part, the poem is really about our human need to craft stories about our choices to give our lives a sense of meaning.
And that really just leaves us with one final thought. Because this poem, it really does hold up a mirror. So think about your own life. Think about those big forks in the road you've faced. How has the story you tell about those choices changed over the years? What are the stories you tell yourself about your very own roads not taken?